Hi, and welcome back to Regular Guitars. Today we are going to discuss attenuation. If you are at all familiar with guitar and electric guitar in particular, you know that there's a big choice between tube amp and solid state amp, between digital and analog. And if you go tube amp, you're probably familiar with a lot of the reasons why people love them. Tubes have a physical component to them, which is pretty much unmatched, in my opinion. When you push a tube hard, it creates a sonic overtone, a harmonic lushness, a richness, a 3D effect almost. You get these harmonic sounds that just thicken out your tone and create something that is so visceral and tactile and just pleasurable as a guitarist. It's another instrument. You can feel the way that those tubes shape the sound. As you push up, it compresses a little bit. Again, you get harmonic overtones. There's a certain richness. The problem with so many amps is that they are so loud. And if you've got a tube amp and you want to get to that level, you've really got to crank it. So there's a balance between the preamp side, the power amp side. Amps all work differently. There's different circuits, but if it's a tube amp, the more you push it, the more those tubes become a factor in the equation. So I've been playing for years with various tube amps. My first tube amp was a Fender 212 DeVille, which was loud as hell, 60 watts, 6L6 tubes, I believe. I have had a Vox AC4, which I think had a 1 watt setting. And that amp really opened my eyes to what a tube could do. And low wattage amps in particular, how you can push those and really play with those tubes, really just max them out and get all those fun tones. But there's a lot of other amps out there, right? A 40 watt Fender Deluxe is going to be loud as hell. And you really can't capture all that tube goodness at bedroom levels, at house levels. Sometimes it's stage levels, given the venue you're playing at. Case in point, my Marshall JCM 900. It is a 100 watt beast. It's switchable down to 50 watts. Regardless, it is so loud, it is almost unusable in a lot of the settings that a normal band would play if you're not playing stadiums. It is incredibly loud. And it's tough to harness that tone if you don't have an attenuator. So I had to go back and forth in a number of different situations where, as I mentioned before, fighting with the sound guy, trying to get your tone out of the amp at a level that's appropriate for the front of house mix. And ultimately, I just said, screw it, and I went and bought a pedal so that I could have my amp at a lower volume, but then use the pedal to get some additional gain and artificially get some of that thickness and distortion that I was looking for. But I still wasn't really happy with that because I felt like I wasn't using my amp to its full potential. Now, don't give me the JCM 900 has a solid state diode or uses diode clipping in the second channel, and I don't care. It has a real tube tone, and I wanted to really use that. So I did my research, was looking at various options from, $50 up to a, $2,000 option for attenuation. I ultimately settled on the Bugera PS1 Power Soak. What you do is you plug it in between the amp and your speaker. In this case, I'm using a 2x12 cab, and you put that in between, and basically what it does, it just soaks up some of that power that the speaker would soak up and allows you to crank your amp without it going through the speakers. So the attenuator soaks up that power, and instead of it going to the speakers, goes to the attenuator. The remaining power goes to the speakers, and you get the benefit of cranking those tubes at a lower volume. And I'll tell you what, it works. So I'm going to play a little bit through my amp here, and hopefully, this is my first time doing it, get a sense of what the difference is. So first, I'm going to set it up where I am going to play without the attenuator, and it'll be deafeningly loud, but that's the way we're going to start off. All right, so first up, we have the non-attenuated amp. This is, again, my Marshall JCM 900 at 50 watts in channel 2 at about 7 on the master, and the pre-gain up at 16, so about 3/4 up. So this is going to be very loud. Oh shit, I didn't record. All right, so this is going to be very loud. All right, so that gives you a little idea of how loud it is. But that's the tone. That's that thick, rich, harmonic, distorted sound. Now I'm going to put the attenuator on. And again, that plugs in between the amp and the speaker. I'll leave my amp settings as they are and be able to turn the attenuator up to soak up that power. The volume at room level is going to go way down. So I'll be able to talk over that. Give me 1 second, now we'll set that up. All right, so the amp settings are exactly the same. I now have the attenuator in, and I've got it cranked to 10. So 10 on the soak dial, which I think means I've got it like 90% attenuated. I'm able to play at like room loud, like conversational level. It's a little bit loud, but it's totally reasonable. Here's the tone. So I actually had to turn my microphone way up because it wasn't reading it. And that's a good sign. Here we go. So there you go. I mean, it's a pretty good sound. Has it taken a little bit of the tone away? Maybe. And maybe that's just because it's softer and there's that resonance with the air moving and everything that you're not going to get. But I'll tell you what, it's getting me like 90% of the way there, which is good enough. And this changes everything. This makes it so that I can play my tube amps fully charged up at reasonable levels. I can play them at home. I can get the tones that I want on stage without having to be concerned about volume levels. So whatever the sound guy wants, I can pretty much do and still sound the way I want to sound. It's amazing. So highly recommended. And this is like, I don't know, this was like $120, which is not cheap per se, but for what it does and what it opens up and unlocks for you, I think it's an amazing value. I will try some more expensive ones just to see People say the reactive load is the way to go, and that's how you get that really dynamic, the most closely approximating experience of using no attenuator is with the reactive load. But for what this is doing and what I'm using it for, it's very simplistic. Now, there's other options that combine a lot of like cab simulation and, again, that reactive load. So there's other options out there. They're probably great, but I'll tell you what, this one's pretty damn good, and would highly recommend it to anyone who has a tube amp. I think it's pretty much a necessity, and I learned it 25 years into the game. So better learn late than never at all. Thanks for tuning in. Keep rocking.
Your battle, stopping your defeat. I'll be at your beck and call. Do anything you please. I will fight your battles, baby. Stopping your defeat. I'll be at your beck and call.